live. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the last panel discussion of the day. And the panel discussion is still on the theme of airline retailing, and we will be discussing in detail the theme optimizing retailing for airline profitability. On stage, we have 4 panelists, and I will do the introductions and quickly hand over to our moderator to take over the discussions for the next 1 hour. Our first panelist is Brian Potter. Brian is Axelia's commercial head for Europe, Middle East, and Africa region, leading the team responsible for providing market-leading offers, order and settlement platforms to airlines in the region. Brian has more than 20 years experience in delivering digital transformation success in various leadership roles, and has delivered best-in-class solutions to airlines, including some of the airlines in Europe, amongst others. Akrem is our next panelist. Akrem is the head of Airline Solutions, Europe, Middle East, and Africa region at Amadeus. He is based in Dubai and has more than 16 years experience in the airline IT industry in various areas. Akrem has highly contributed in designing airline solutions around shopping, reshopping, and digital. He works closely with customers and lead digital, NDC, and merchandising solutions. And then he also works globally as head of airline solutions teams in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. Our third panelist is Cem Kyrgyz from Hitit. Cem is the sales director at Hitit. He is responsible for all aspects of Hitit's sales processes. He has been working in the IT industry for almost 10 years with experiences in both implementation and sales positions. Under his guidance, Hitit has acquired numerous partner airlines in different parts of the world. Cem is a graduate of economics and communications at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And our fourth panelist is Mr. Christoph Viat, Director and Head of Sales and Engineering at Seba Airlines, Seba Travel Solutions. Christoph is a senior airline executive with over 20 years of extensive commercial experience with airlines, especially in the field of pricing, revenue management, scheduling, network planning, and business development. He joined Seba Airline Solutions in 2018, and he joined from Alitalia, where he was the executive director in charge of the overall O&D revenue optimization, including systems, people, and processes. From these profiles, we see how well suited our panelists are for this discussion of the day. And the session shall be moderated by Mr. Steve Cardman, who is the president of Cardman Associates, International Restructuring Advisors. Steve Cardman is the founder and president of Cardman Associates, a New York City-based strategic advisory firm specializing in providing strategic advice to clients involved in complex and challenging international restructuring situations, with a special focus on emerging markets around the globe. I now hand over to Steve, who will, for the next 1 hour, lead the discussions on this subject matter. Please keep in your questions to the panelists through the chat and through the Q&A, and we shall channel this to the panelists as the discussion progresses. I now hand over to Steve for the next 1 hour of discussion. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you very much, Maureen, welcome to our distinguished panelists, and good afternoon to the attendees of this conference. I will now say a few words of introduction to our topic. The first issue is, why is optimizing retailing important for African airlines? As we all know, African airlines have suffered from historic unprofitability, and this has only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. African airlines suffered massive losses in 2020 and saw a very sharp drop in passenger traffic. With many African airlines in dire financial straits, the airlines need to identify ways to, one, achieve greater efficiency in their operations, and two, tap into new revenue streams. If airlines optimize their retailing, this could potentially lead to expanded revenues and greater profitability. Next slide, please. How COVID has changed the retailing environment. As we've heard, there's huge pent-up customer demand. Post-COVID, customers may have different needs and wants than pre-COVID. During the pandemic, consumers worldwide grew very accustomed to ordering online, as some observers refer to the Amazon effect. In other words, the shift away from visiting physical retail outlets and ordering online. As a result, airline customers now have different expectations with respect to their online shopping experiences. The issue is, can African airlines provide retailing, including through e-retailing and e-commerce, that meets the needs and wants of their customers? We should note the crucial role that new technologies, whether it's AI, big data, machine learning, or other new technologies, could play in the airline efforts to optimize retailing. Next slide. Role of data in optimizing the retailing experience. Data is absolutely central to the 21st century economy. In fact, it might be considered the fuel of the 21st century economy. Airlines have the good fortune of sitting on a treasure trove of data about their customers. With effective use of data, airlines could potentially play a larger role in a customer's entire travel experience, and possibly even in the customer's broader lifestyle experience. Acelia has prepared an excellent white paper on this topic, which AFRAA will make available after the conference. There's the possibility of airlines providing enhanced apps for all travel-related information, but also broad e-commerce platforms for consumers. This raises the notion of a digital airline. In other words, an airline that is offering digital services in addition to flying passengers. And this seems to be the direction, for example, that AirAsia is going in. And Ethiopian has also introduced enhanced apps for travel-related information. Data is already in the possession of airlines, could potentially be their secret weapon in optimizing their retailing efforts, including in e-commerce. Next slide, please. So to conclude, optimizing retailing could be a crucial part of airlines' turnaround strategy post-COVID. Post-COVID, African airlines essentially need to reinvent themselves to compete effectively in a changed competitive landscape wrought by the COVID-19 pandemic. Optimizing retailing, including through e-commerce, could be a keystone of any such turnaround reinvention effort to restore profitability for the airlines. Airlines will need to consider how they can better serve their customers, including with a new expanded set of online offerings. Airlines can tap into the abundance of customer-related data that they already have at their disposal. But airlines may need to acquire and invest in new technologies and new staff and form new partnerships with relevant third parties. At this point, we can jump into our question and answer session with our panelists and explore some of these issues in greater detail. For the first question, how has the airline customer changed as a result of the COVID pandemic? And how should airlines adjust their retailing efforts to respond to the changed airline customer? Brian, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, sure, Steve. It's an excellent question. I think most fundamentally, lockdown has had an incredible impact on all of us as consumers. I think that we've all become heavy users of e-commerce, and as a result, we also expect a high level of quality, automation, and intuitiveness from the sites and apps that we interact with. This is the Amazon effect that you were referring to. I think that we've seen from the technologies that we use that personalized offers, AI and machine learning based recommendations, and freedom of choice have really become default in our digital experiences. So customers really have much higher expectations, Steve. And I think that combined with that, really over the last 18 months or so, we've seen that flying has become a very different experience for the average consumer. I've recently been in the Middle East, in Doha and Dubai, and my experience was all about PCR tests, additional paperwork. There was the uncertainty around the different regulatory requirements, and then there's the overall worry about mandatory quarantines if you actually do test positive at any point. So a lot of anxiety and friction has been added to the airline experience. So as a result, airlines are really having to cater to new needs from their customers. Customers have higher expectations of their digital experience, and they need reassurance and guidance across all of the different touch points. So I think for airlines, if done successfully, retail solutions can incorporate technologies like new distribution capability and merchandising to really kind of meet these requirements at each customer touch point for these higher expectations, and also take a look at how they effectively craft the offer to the consumer to cater for that level of reassurance that the customer needs.
Very good. Christoph, would you like to add your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think to add on the Brian comments, that's from a passenger perspective, a customer perspective. From an airline point of view as well, already prior to COVID, it was extremely challenging to adjust to market conditions and market dynamics. Low-cost carrier changed dramatically the way traditional airlines were working in the past, and to adjust to that, airlines were relying mainly on revenue management systems, right? And revenue management system looking at historical data that became completely irrelevant in time of COVID. So now what happened over the last 2 years that airlines have been forced to reinvent themselves, and it also put a lot of pressure on their teams to manually adjust all this system in order to cope with this fast change of demand. So what we have done ourselves, Seba, is to take an important step to enter in this strategic partnership with Google, where we want to include some of the machine learning and artificial intelligence models into our solution from a retailing perspective, also from a revenue management perspective, in order to help airlines to accelerate their own digitalization. So for African airlines in particular, this becomes extremely relevant, as it's very difficult to secure resources, right? So you know that a lot of airlines in the region will hire expats with a lot of knowledge to run either revenue management team, pricing teams, retailing teams. And it becomes an extreme challenge in time of crisis as we face today. So for those airlines, it would be extremely important to benefit from automation. And bringing this artificial intelligence and machine learning in, we, together with Google, are bringing dynamic pricing into reality. So we launched recently 2 solutions from our retail intelligence suite, Air Price IQ, which is our dynamic pricing solution for air that can support airline for automation on availability and pricing decision on the air content as such. And also Ancillary IQ. Ancillary IQ is where we bring basically dynamic pricing intelligence using AI and ML to pull ancillary as such. Ancillary was always treated as a side business for a lot of airlines. And today, because of the pressure from low cost as well, we realize that it's one of the centerpiece of the retail optimization. So we believe that these innovations are needed. And also, as Brian mentioned, there is really a need for automation to support African airlines at the moment, as they are really under pressure with resources.
Very good. What are the learnings from the onset of COVID-19 to date on retailing, and in what ways has your organization supported airlines, particularly African airlines, to become retail ready in the post-COVID era? Akrem?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Steve, for the great introduction and for the great question. I'm really happy and excited to be here with you in the AFRAA General Assembly. I've been in a couple of times, this first time as panelist. It's a great honor for me and my company, Amadeus. So the airline industry was evolving in a very dynamic environment impacted by the politics, economics, ecology, and here comes the sanitary crisis to strengthen this aspect. So the COVID crisis was a massive disruption for the whole airline industry, who needed to fix the basics to restart their sales and retailing. And with the experience we had with the several airlines in Africa and worldwide, the two main challenges that have been raised were around the demand forecast and also around the dealing with all the changing rules and regulation with customers. So for the first challenge around demand forecast, as Christophe mentioned, the historical data has been completely broken over the past year. So what we have done here is that we introduced a new and innovative solution, which is AI-based, and which has been actually launched by one of our pilot partners, Scandinavian Airline. Basically, instead of looking at the full year of historical data, we were able, thanks to AI, to look only to the past few weeks or months and to predict the demand forecast. And the results were outstanding because Scandinavian observed an increase of 30% of their forecast accuracy. For the second aspect around the COVID and the changing rules, Amadeus developed fairly quickly a solution which is called the Traveler ID for safe travel. And this solution is actually automating all the health check regulations and also allowing to upload all the documents in a digital way through the online checking through optical character recognition, OCR. And also it integrates all the major health providers like the IATA Pass, Health Pass, the IBM Health Pass, the European Digital COVID Certificate, known also as UEDCC. And of course, we ensure a seamless integration with the rest of the system when it comes to reservation and DCS. This was a big success because several airlines implemented this solution already, 12 of them in total, including major groups like the Lufthansa Group, the Air Canada, but also in Africa, we had airlines like the South African airline, Airlink, who have launched this safe travel solution. And it allowed in the past months to automate 2 million health check for the overall passenger. You can imagine how this is a great relief for all these passengers to come to the airport with all these checks already done. And this provides a scalable solution for the future, because today we are dealing with 50% of the demand of 2019. Imagine when we are back at the level of 2019, we need to have such automation to ensure that all the documents are digitally checked and to speed up the process of checking and avoid queues at the airport.
Thank you, Akrem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip to a subsequent question because we may lose Brian and Christophe in a few minutes, and I want to make sure they have a chance, and we'll come to you, Cem, right after we finish with them, okay? In airline retailing, in which areas can airlines most effectively achieve efficiencies and cost savings? And how should they go about achieving such efficiencies and cost savings? Brian, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure, Steve. Thanks for the question. I think that, firstly, I'd like to say that, there are cost savings to be had through a channel strategy that effectively embraces both direct and NDC channels. And this enables cost savings as it typically allows airlines to avoid the more costlier distribution mechanics. And then there's the other side, which is really by taking control of the offer. And by taking control of the offer, the airline essentially gets the opportunity for revenue uplift through merchandising capability. So this is where airlines have the ability to grow revenues through ancillaries and bundling. But I think for our Flex platform, which is really our distribution platform that adopts 3 key IATA initiatives, which are NDC, One Order, and Settlement with Order, there are a couple of specific areas of cost saving that I want to speak to. Firstly, I think that the new technology, while it does require investment, over the lifetime cost of ownership, it is much lower. There are also cost savings to be had once an airline moves towards the new technologies like One Order and Settlement with Order across ticketing, payment, and revenue accounting. And that's essentially delivered through streamlined processes. With that as well, there's back office automation that is effectively delivering key returns. And then there's improvement on revenue integrity, which removes the costs of fare audit, for example. The airline also gets control over payment methods, so it can start delivering optimization in terms of the payment solutions it provides. And ultimately, real-time settlement delivers further cost savings as it cuts the cost of agency defaults, etc. So really, there are multiple areas where airlines can essentially achieve those types of cost savings and efficiencies.
Christophe?
Yeah, I would like from a technology perspective, basically the objective we have taken at Seba is really to bring all our intelligence together with Google at the usage of airlines, right? All the intelligence we get from our shopping data in GDS, all intelligence we get from Google experimentation as well, in order to basically facilitate this automation of the processes. So looking at experimentation, adding artificial intelligence and machine learning in our new solution, Air Price IQ and Ancillary IQ, we are able to experiment in real time as customers are shopping and booking, what is their preference in regards of the air content as such and the ancillary. The optimal target, and we have committed by 2025 to create a new marketplace for travel, where basically we want to create new end-to-end travel experiences for customers. And those travel experiences fully powered by experimentation, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So we at the moment in our new solution experiment in real time how people buy different options. And basically we are able to position to the airline the most successful offer that customer intend to buy. And this is done in real time using, as I said, our high valuable intelligence for shopping data in GDS, combined with all the technology that Google is bringing into Air Price IQ and Ancillary IQ.
Very good. We'll come to Cem in 1 minute, but since you two have to leave momentarily for another commitment, since the conference fell behind, could you share with us any parting thoughts, final recommendations, how we can make some of these notions lead to tangible results? Brian, would you like to take a stab at that?
Yeah, sure. I think, Steve, really for us, I think that the key message here is that airlines need to start thinking of themselves as retailers, and I think with that, as I've indicated before, the cost benefit of this type of thinking comes from adopting new technologies that allow you to drive your sales volume through your cheapest distribution channels. So that'll be your direct mobile web platform, your agency booking tool, and through NDC. And with this brings retailing freedom. And retailing freedom also means that the airline is taking back control of the offer. And by taking control of the offer across all channels, the airline is able to deliver merchandising strategies that allows it to tailor the product to both the customer and the channel, and use merchandising solutions to unlock revenue uplift from ancillaries and bundles. And this for us is the promise of retailing freedom that's contained in the Flex platform that Excelia provides.
Christophe, some final thoughts before you leave?
Yeah, so from Seba perspective is also the transition, right? From today's world where everything is static and often controlled by manual rules and inputs from an analyst perspective. There is very limited intelligence as well and limited self-learning capabilities in all retailing solutions available in the market now. The traditional revenue management system, the traditional pricing tools are not taking in consideration customer choice preference and customer shopping behavior. So bringing that into our solutions in Air Price IQ and Ancillary IQ, we want to move with the airlines to the future, which is to pull dynamic content with thousands of experiments, right, running in real time. As customers shop and book, we understand which offer has to be powered at the right time for the right customer. And this is thanks to our intelligence machine learning based retail engine that we are at the moment powering with Google. And that brings a lot of additional inputs and decision support to airlines. Finally, as also Brian mentioned, to bring the total offer to the customer, not always segmenting the flight part, the ancillary part, and the third-party content, but really bringing an end-to-end travel experience, an end-to-end personalized offer to the customer in real time as they shop and book. So all that is really the next step technology that we are bringing in our new solution, Air Price IQ and Ancillary IQ.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you both, Brian and Christophe, for squeezing your thoughts and comments into this short half hour. And we know you have to excuse yourselves now, so we'll have a further discussion with Cem and Akram on some of the other issues.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for your time, Steve. And thank you to the delegates at AFRAA and to my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Christophe. Okay, Cem, we come back to you now. Sorry about that, but this was unexpected. Let's go back to the question about since the onset of COVID-19, what have been the major learnings with respect to retailing and so forth? What have you seen, and what thoughts do you have to offer on this topic?
Sure. Thank you, Steve, and greetings from Istanbul. Again, it's a pleasure to be in the panel, and thank you to anybody who's joining us at the last session of the day. It's usually the most difficult, as you know, everybody has been through many different types of conversations. So I appreciate anyone that is listening to us and joining us live. So at Hitit, you know, we come from I think a different perspective than you would expect. You know, it's primarily a PSS, passenger service systems perspective that we look into. You know, we actually have been primarily focused on increasing revenue for airlines. We have been at the forefront of actually trying to increase that retailing, or I guess retailing, e-commerce, B2C, basically digitalization of the airlines, and trying to basically be a cost-effective platform for them. So essentially what COVID-19 kind of brought was, when we look at pre-COVID and even now, the aviation industry, especially airlines, are probably the most conservative culturally in changing their business models and adapt to new technologies. It's even more so for the African region. The African airlines, very resistant to try new things, very resistant to try different sales channels. So that definitely from the management level all the way onto, you know, the user of any type of system, we have seen that conservativeness, that reluctance to take risks have been there more so in the African region overall. Africa, by the way, is actually the #1 region for Hitit. So we have the most amount of customers, most amount of airlines that work with us in the African region. So it's a very dear region to our hearts, and it's definitely the major focus for us. So the pandemic actually brought a forced kind of way of looking into this risk and forcing the airlines to change their business model, forcing the airlines to change their perspective on how they view things, while the actual risk became basically continuing business as is. So that, you know, and retailing and being an, you know, e-commerce, touching the customer directly is actually became a must instead of a luxury for most airlines. When we look at the PSS industry, that together with one of the major players leaving, the PSS business, it certainly became a huge year for us, and I imagine for a lot of my colleagues in the panel, especially in terms of PSS and especially in terms of implementing solutions for these airlines that were forced to change the way they're looking at how their businesses and changing their business models. The old school way of doing business, where old school business models made it very difficult before to push the sales into digital channels, but we see that culturally passengers are expecting a direct-to-consumer retailing. I mean, we look at the mobile apps that we are all used to, whether we order groceries or order food. It's the same way with aviation. So passengers are really expecting to be able to control their own tickets. So it's not just the airlines controlling the product itself. That's one part of it. The second part of it is the passengers expecting to control their product as well. The products that they are purchasing directly with the consumer without any middleman and without any intermediary, anybody to deal with. So that's basically what we've seen. Finally, I think it's very important to mention are the ancillary type of it, which is a very important factor when we think about cash flows of airlines. It's not just about ticket sales anymore. It never was about just ticket sales, but even more so today, it's about ancillaries. And it's about ancillaries that are not old school, like extra seat, baggage, hotel or car rentals. It's more about, whether you can sell an additional seat due to COVID, an extra seat, or bundle the PCR test with the air ticket. So it's those type of ancillary products that the airlines are trying to offer to their passengers. And as one of the leading PSS providers in Africa, we really supported this flexibility across all distribution channels, whether that's NDC, API, any type of sales channel that the airline has. We really look into having them able to offer these products to their passengers directly.
So, Cem, those are additional travel amenities that can be offered to the passenger before they board the flight. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Either during the booking process or either during the check-in process, at any time before they board the flight, they would be able to acquire these solutions. Overall, it's called ancillaries in the industry.
Right. Let's go to the next question for Akrem. What are the pain points being experienced by African airlines on e-commerce and retailing? What do you recommend as measures to address these challenges?
Thanks, Steve, for the great question again. So we have been engaging with many African airlines in the area of e-commerce and retailing to support them shift the traffic from their digital channels to adopt more efficient retailing technique. From what we have seen, the main pain points in digital and retailing are around 3 axes. So the first one is the most important one is the spread of online payment capability in their different local markets, for which several airlines have to create reservations online, put them on hold, and passenger can still pay such reservation with cash at the agency. But that is not optimal at all and does not help to increase the conversion rate. The second pain point is how to acquire more customers in the digital landscape and ecosystem. So they actually land on the airline.com instead of going to Expedia or to other big OTA. Some airlines are doing well and using some of our partner solutions and Amadeus solution like Kenyan Airways, for example, but this is still very limited in Africa. The equation is simple. The less customers coming to your website, the less booking you will generate online. And the third challenge is around overall the technology and data usage. Not all African airlines are well equipped with the latest technology solutions to address the true merchandising and personalization techniques to optimize the retailing experience. This is the same challenge around, for example, the digital analytics data to actually track and monitor what is happening on your online boutique, understand what are the blocking points, and how to fix them, perform some A/B testing, and select the best experience. Without such analytics, it's like you have a physical retailing boutique and you do not know how many customers are coming in, what are the products they like, what are the products they dislike, and you don't discuss with any customer at all. So it's very tough to make such boutique successful. Last but not least, airlines will have to use more and more sophisticated technology to be competitive and thrive. This is not possible without having the right skills on the airline side. Africa is full of skills, and the airline need to create that right environment to use a modern technology to attract, retain such skills by offering them the challenge they deserve to stay and serve the best airline interest. So to overcome these challenges, I recommend to the various African airlines to further develop the integration with their local payment provider and to adopt ready off-the-shelf digital and retailing solutions. At Amadeus, we have been massively investing in digital and retailing since several years, and we have introduced the Digital Experience Suite, which is a new platform at the edge of technology and a complete open platform. It comes with a development environment, which is called Developer Toolkit. It comes also with a user interface, a white label user interface called the Reference Experience, and a modern retailing experience, which is based on a shopping cart concept similar to Amazon. It allows the airlines developers team to access the source code of the UI component, and this shows and demonstrates the ultimate openness of our platform. Airlines will be able to use that source code as an accelerator of their own applications, and that would reduce the cost by 40%. It comes also with an integrated leading CMS to manage the UI content and in a modern way, which is Adobe. And of course, very important, it comes with the data lake, which is already pre-integrated to allow airlines to track what's happening on their online boutique and also take the corrective action. I believe with both the Digital Experience Suite and the Amadeus payment platform, we are ready in terms of openness to support the airline, the African airline, with a cost-effective approach.
Akram, is this the type of solution that could be made available to all airlines, or would it just be the airlines that have more resources at their disposal could make this type of investment?
The platform is a solution that can be available to all airlines. It's not designed, we know that one size does not fit all. So there are various ways of adoption of this platform. Either the airline can get a complete ready off-the-shelf retailing platform, and they just adapt the branding of such platform, and then it's up running in a few weeks. Or they can go deeper, use the platform off-the-shelf UI as an accelerator, do a bespoke development if they have the right resources and skills on their side to make it much more appealing, much more powerful in terms of retailing technique.
Very good. Shem, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm with you, Steve.
We lost your video, but we could hear you loud and clear. Maybe you could answer the same question that Akram has just discussed about the pain points being experienced by African airlines on e-commerce and retailing. And what do you recommend as measures to address these challenges?
Sure. Yes, and apologies for the camera, by the way. I couldn't get it to turn back on, but okay. I'm glad that you can hear me. So I think I'll go back to kind of what I originally discussed in my first comments is, you know, as the populations increase in Africa and along with the middle class, and you get a younger generation that is kind of looking for that more digitalization that we see perhaps on the European and American airlines. I think definitely that culture change that I was referring to is definitely a major player in terms of a demand. You know, you can't have a product without the demand. So I think that the demand is certainly there. And then there's also push to change that culture, as I mentioned before, where the direct-to-consumer approach in the e-commerce is definitely there. So although that particular culture is, I would say, the #1 effort, and if the pandemic never happened, I would have said it would have taken a longer period for a lot of the airlines to adapt. I think at the moment, we see a lot of demands and a lot of kind of perspectives. One thing that I will say, and it's not necessarily a pain point on just the African airlines, but it's basically as a vendor, as an IT vendor for a lot of these airlines, before the pandemic and for a very long time, it used to be that the airline would need to fit the vendors. So meaning that whatever the vendor can provide them, the airline would eventually have to accept and kind of develop their business model and business strategy around that. That world has changed significantly with a lot of newcomers in the field, a lot of alternatives, and a lot of different types of products, vendors, and solutions out there. It's a time now where the vendors now need to fit the business model of the airlines. So on both sides, the African airlines now need to clearly define the type of business strategy, whether it's like the ancillaries that I'm mentioning, or if they want to be a pure digital airline, or they want to be a low cost, or they want to continue business as is. While on the vendor side, there really needs to be that flexibility to fit the airline's needs and requirements immediately with shorter terms and definitely shorter periods of implementation. So I think this pandemic and post-pandemic world is only going to benefit both parties essentially. And I think we're definitely going to see the culture shift, the kind of that relationship between airline and vendor definitely change. And we're definitely going to see where vendors that can fit the airline models better is going to thrive and even increase there as well. Definitely other than these two, definitely the financial discipline, definitely making the budget and kind of the importance in terms of hierarchy on where they need to kind of invest is definitely a part. I suppose that's overall under the umbrella of the culture, because culture is not only on the passenger side, but it's also on the management side of the airline. And I think definitely the payment technology is there. The trust should be there as well. I'll give you an example. When a low-cost airline that started out very small 15 years ago called Pegasus in Turkey is one of the largest low-cost airlines in the world now. So it's definitely started out very small. I remember when I was a young kid, the low-cost strategy and low-cost aspect was very foreign to us, but eventually that digitalization, that touching the customer directly definitely thrived, and now it is accepted by everyone here. So it's just an example of what we've seen kind of around the world in different types of business models, and it's only going to increase from there.
And as you're suggesting, I believe the COVID crisis has accelerated thinking about these types of issues and what business models to employ and what retailing strategies to use. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. On both sides, not just airlines, but also on the vendor side as well. So on both sides, it has accelerated significantly the development of business strategies and development of solutions that fit those business strategies.
Very good. Let's move to the next question. The African continent is plagued by many unique challenges, and therefore modernity and the adoption of digital technology many times does not come as an immediate priority. Battling for survival, many African airlines only embrace technology that is either mandated by the regulator or absolutely crucial to business survival. How can African airlines in particular harness new technologies to improve their retailing efforts? We've discussed this to some extent, but Akram, would you like to respond?
So one of the main goals of Amadeus is to make the technology accessible to all airlines, regardless of their region, of their size. And we have been very successful into providing very cost-effective off-the-shelf solution, which are funded by a community or a budget, which we call also community solution, to bring the airlines a huge business value with minimal implementation time and effort. So airlines can quickly start benefit from the solution and enjoy the actual value realization. So when it comes to also the new technology adoption regarding the AI and machine learning, Actually, most of our lines already benefit from such technology because it's already embedded there everywhere in several solutions which are being used by African airlines and others. We can name few like in the shopping solutions, we already use machine learning algorithm to predict YQIR levels and to enhance the performance. We do use AI also in revenue management with the customer choice model. And also within merchandising solutions, we are using the ML machine learning science. And there we allow airlines to inject even their own machine learning science and to optimize the price of ancillaries, for example. And we have very concrete cases study. One of them is with Finnair. They have injected their own ML to optimize the price of the seats. And just with one ancillary, which is the seats, chargeable seats, they were able to generate an additional revenue of $1 million per month. So you can imagine—
This is through the application of machine learning.
Yes, this is through the application of the machine learning to adjust the seat price depending on the customer behavior and his willingness to pay and the customer choice model. Then comes the processing of big data. So it's a topic that has been touch based also by the colleagues from Brian and Christoph. So the big data is one of the most, let's say, advanced retailing technique, which is getting a lot of traction and from the industry and from the airlines. And one of the most interesting technique is the dynamic pricing. And here we're talking about something which is live. It's not just a buzzword about dynamic pricing and offers. It's live with several major and leading customers like the Singapore Airlines or others. So a true science-based dynamic pricing has been launched with these airlines, and it proved that it could raise up their revenues by 6%. So in a nutshell, I can briefly, so on top of the revenue management indications, the airline will, thanks to the dynamic pricing, will be able to look at the live data coming from the competition. And here we're talking, of course, about the public data coming from the competition that can come from various sources, from Amadeus, but also from the airline. We compare also the product specificities because a direct flight does not equal a connecting flight with a lot of hours flying. And then based on AI and the customer choice model that has been well embedded by Amadeus in the various optimization algorithm, we adapt the price to the optimal price with the highest probability of purchase for that specific shopping query. So you can imagine the level of massive data that needs to be processed to the cloud to get that optimal price in a matter of less than a second and to bring it into a shopping result. So to make a simple analogy to simplify this, so you can think about the car's traffic. So when I was young, my dad, to take me from a point A to a point B, had to guess what is the quickest route. And unfortunately, that was just human guessing, so we were often stuck at the traffic jam. With today's technology and about big data processing, the interactive maps, you can exactly know, thanks to this live processing, what is the shortest route, what is the quickest route. No more human guessing, you get it science-based thanks to the data. It's exactly the same thing with dynamic pricing. It allows the airline to find the perfect and the optimal price for that itinerary by looking at the live data around the context of the market at that time and for that itinerary. I hope that you agree that this is very powerful and it will change the face of the airlines retailing in the near future.
Very good. And Cem, do you want to offer some thoughts on how the airlines can harness these new technologies to improve their retailing efforts?
Sure, Steve. I think, I wouldn't want to repeat myself because I think, we've touched a lot upon my previous comments as well. What I'll kind of leave the topic is basically the old misconception where technological capability being a trade-off for cost effectiveness doesn't really exist anymore. As I mentioned before, there are multiple options, there are multiple players in the market now that can offer many different types of solutions, strategies, and different types of consultancy for the airlines. I think what really matters at the end of the day is picking the correct partners for the airline, and definitely making sure that the conditions for the airline are fitting today's today's world conditions. We at Hitit, we've always focused on providing the best of both worlds, providing capable technology that is also cost effective. And you also need to be flexible and efficient. You can't have, a request coming from an airline and then telling them, okay, give me $100,000, I'll do that in 1 year. So you have to be quick. You have to make sure that the partners are the right one for you. I think that's the most important one, because each airline is different in size. Each airline is different in terms of culturally. Even within Africa, you have all different types of, strategies, depending on the country that the airline resides in. Some of them are really relying on their particular, partnership with other airlines. Some of them are looking into point-to-point flying. Some of them are looking into, transit flights. So it's really, sitting down and really figuring out what exactly is the strategy, what we're looking into, and who is the right partner for us. That's, I think, the most important one, because all the other aspects that I mentioned before that has to do with this topic as well, about that culture change, about that, increasing your revenue per passenger, it all comes down to this particular approach. And the fact that, investing in technology is not a risk anymore. The real risk is not investing in technology and continuing business as is. So I guess that would be my kind of final topic on, or final comment, I should say, on this topic overall.
Very good. The last major topic we want to discuss in the few minutes we have remaining relates to NDC. NDC transforms the way airlines retail their products to travelers by addressing the industry's current distribution limitations, enabling cost efficiency and revenue optimization. In that way, NDC could be at the foundation of airlines' path back to profitability. Let me ask both of you one or two quick questions on NDC. What are the benefits of retail thinking, and how should airlines implement transformation? Akram, do you want to start off?
Yes, sure. So airlines need to consider NDC as a new vehicle for them to sell better, to sell more. So NDC gives back the control of the offer construction to the airline, as it becomes the source of truth and the single source of truth for all channels, including the direct, the indirect, and including also the construction of that dynamic offer and dynamic pricing. In order to well embark on the NDC journey, airlines need first to have a clear strategy around merchandising, what to sell and to whom. They need to start experimenting then the NDC and different sales channel and adapt their strategy along the way. The technology is there, it is very mature. As you know, Amadeus Salte NDC is having the highest level of certification, which is level 4, which is and also certified at scale. And several African airlines are already using and experimenting that solution with us. One point very important, which needs to have the right attention, is that NDC will bring to the airline IT systems a huge volume of transaction they have never seen before. Basically, once we are in a world at 100% of NDC adoption, all the existing traffic, whether it's the traffic hitting the GDS, the OTAs, the direct, the digital, will come directly later on to the airline NDC IT component to question it and to get the airline offer from that single source of truth. So such NDC solution has to be very scalable and future-proof from now on. The good thing.
Let me turn to Shem if I could, because we're almost out of time. Shem, do you want to offer some thoughts on this NDC issue?
Sure. Just very few comments in addition to Akram, because I think he really explained it really well. What I would say is, yeah, I mean, NDC is basically a way to standardize the way airline content is distributed, right? So, you know, I think there's still a way to go for this, because I think a lot of airlines need to first adapt to this technology. But I think the real keyword there is, you know, airlines definitely taking back control of their products, so that the passengers can also take control of their products and kind of you know, back and forth in that aspect. You know, before NDC, there were already some custom APIs that were used for directly accessing the, you know, airlines offerings, but NDC will definitely provide a, you know, a streamlined and kind of a more cost-effective channel, and a common language for all sellers, you know, to use multiple providers with similar developments. I think this is one of the key aspects that we're going to see more and more in the future, and hopefully have leaner and more easily accessible technology for all airlines, regardless of whatever system that they use in the back end.
Very good. I'll ask both of you one final question, the same question I asked Brian and Christoph before they had to leave. How do we turn today's discussion into actions that will yield tangible results? Who should we engage with next, either collectively or individually? Akram?
Yes, so as you listened during this interesting discussion, the technology to support African retailing and digital strategy is mostly available and already there on the market. So we would like our African airline partners to start first their homework, define what would be their retailing and digital strategy before engaging any technology discussion, because at the end technology is there to serve business. It's not the opposite. You can I invite you also to reach out to the different account teams, to the solution teams, including myself, to help you also defining that strategy in a true partnership spirit. Once we are all clear about the steps to be taken towards a global retailing transformation, that becomes much more clear. We can engage the adapted solution to your needs and to your market to effectively start realizing the value and have a very concrete and very impactful realization together.
Very good. Cem, do you want to offer your final thoughts on how we can see more tangible results coming out of what we've been discussing today?
Yes, I mean, as I kind of mentioned in my previous comments as well, and going along with Akram, definitely reach out to as many vendors, as many partners as possible. There are many players out there. It's a sea of solutions for the airlines, and it's only going to get better because, you know, competition brings, you know, just better products overall. I would definitely, as I said before, definitely figure out the strategy, look into what is there in the future, and kind of build upon that, the partnerships that require the airlines to get there. That would be my primary kind of leaving comment to everybody.
Excellent. Well, we've had a very stimulating and substantive discussion over the last hour. I think as everybody can hear, this is a very exciting environment in which airlines are now operating. And they have many opportunities to optimize retailing, but it goes back to having a strategy and being able to implement the strategy and to think creatively about these issues. But it also requires addressing the customer, the passenger's needs and wants in this new environment, the post-COVID environment, where they become so accustomed to online shopping and so forth. But it sounds as if the technological and retailing solutions are not tailored just to the big carriers, but could be more widely available and therefore help the competitiveness of the African airline industry in general, and as this panel was supposed to address the key issue of profitability, it could be an avenue to restored profitability for airlines around the world. And of course, Africa, that's a very urgent need given the historical performance of the airlines. Well, thank you all, Akrem and Cem, and before Brian and Christoph. And back to you, Maureen.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Akrem and Cem, for participating till the end of the session. We had two of our other panelists who, because of the time lapse, were not able to be with us until the end of the session, but they managed to give their contributions up to the 30th minute of the discussion. Thank you so much to Steve for very ably moderating this panel discussion. And thank you to our participants for following us through the discussions. And it's been quite a day with a lot of content, and we've gotten to discuss a lot of insights. And this last session has focused on airline retailing. We got a perspective before the panel from SITA, and now we have discussed with the solution providers on specific details and strategies that airlines can put in place to optimize airline retailing for profitability. And now we will be proceeding to the closing ceremony. This has been the last discussion of the annual General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, let us meet in the next 1 minute at the closing ceremony, where we shall be presenting the resolutions that have been taken. They shall be adopted by the Assembly. We shall be giving you highlights of these resolutions. We shall also have the announcement of the next year's host of the AGM, and there shall be a speech from our new president, and this shall take place also at the closing ceremony. We also will be making some few announcements, and to our participants from the various media houses, we will be doing a press conference immediately we conclude the assembly. Let us meet at the closing ceremony for the last step of the annual General Assembly. Thank you, and see you on the other side.